Intruder entered through kitchen sliding door.
Nationwide victims.
Yeah, this is Will Graham of the FBI.
One killer.
Welcome to Movie Matters. I'm Kevin.
I'm Jake.
And today we're talking about the 1986 film from Michael Mann called Manhunter. That trailer is very interesting. I feel like all these trailers give everything away.
Yeah, they so far we've watched. It's been about split where half of them have fit extremely well with the tone of the movie, and some are like completely wrong. And this is one that's completely wrong.
Yeah, agreed. It just like has that upbeat song in the middle of it that comes out of nowhere and
Yeah,
just not the tone of the movie by any means.
no.
Yeah, so this movie is about a former FBI profiler, Will Graham, played by William Peterson, who returns to service to pursue a deranged serial killer dubbed the Tooth Fairy by the media. Really awesome movie. I've seen it. I've seen it prior. I saw it when I was like 15 years old and loved it. My cousin showed me it back when he was showing me a whole slew of 80s movies, and then I showed you it, right?
Yeah, we watched it either in high school or college. I don't remember, but yeah, I remember thinking it was a pretty interesting movie. But watching it this is my second time watching it, I have a much greater appreciation for it.
Same. Yeah, same here. It's such a well done movie. Like
Yeah.
it's so good, and it's entertaining, it's thrilling, it's good. It's definitely on a high list of 80s movies, of good 80s movies in my opinion.
Yeah, and like we'll probably talk about Michael Mann again at some point, but he focuses a lot on like realism in his films. And like this movie is fairly heavy in like the technical details of like profiling, especially for like criminal investigation and stuff, which is pretty cool. And like frankly, I think quite ahead of its time considering the uh like true crime craze, in the present. Yeah, this movie's like prime for that kind of audience.
Oh yeah, agreed. They could literally turn it into a series right now, and every girl on their sofa would binge it in one day,
Yeah.
myself included. To be fair.
Yeah, probably.
But yeah, ironically, this movie did not do well when it first came out. It had a bunch of mixed reviews. It didn't do any favors for William Peterson's career. Like he was honestly on point to be a movie star, especially with To Live and Die in L.A. But obviously we've done that episode recently on that movie, which is fantastic. Same actor. He just didn't have a good track record, and this movie was considered a failure. And I mean, obviously he didn't get fame until more newer times with CSI, with Crime Scene Investigation. But this movie has had a resurgence. It's considered a cult classic, and critics have kind of reevaluated it and said it's a tried and true classic.
Yeah, it's definitely not of its time. Like I said, it's not a big flashy kind of like thriller from the 80s. It's very if you like change the music, which is like obviously dates it to the 80s, and
Yeah.
put in some like more like contemporary like score to it, it could easily be a movie made in like the past 20 years.
Yeah. Agreed.
Like it's incredibly intense, and like psychological, especially for that time, that decade.
Agreed. Agreed. The cinematography is killer. I mean, just off,
Hmm.
literally off the beginning of the movie where it opens on the beach in Florida with William Peterson's character Will and Dennis Farina characters Jack, and it basically starts off with the inciting incident almost with Jack being like, "Hey, like, come back to work. There's a pretty gnarly killer that we need you to capture. Like, figure out what's going on with them."
Hmm.
And I again like the profiler aspect of it. I loved that. I thought that's so cool. Um, I remembered bits and pieces of this movie. Again, I hadn't seen it since I was like 15, 15 or 16, so it's been a while. And rewatching it, I had a whole new appreciation for it. I think it's a classic. Like, it's such a good movie.
Yeah. Yeah, I like the a lot of the scenes at night are shot with like a blue filter that makes it like almost kind of surreal, which is really neat. It's a really cool effect. And then a lot of the scenes where Will Graham is like trying to get in the head of the killer are filmed incredibly well, and like lots of like really kind of like, I don't know how to describe it besides like creepy like camera work where like he's sitting and watching in one scene he's sitting and watching home movies of one of the families that was killed, and he's trying to like get inside the killer's head and think like why would this guy target this family, and like how would he have like gotten into the house, and why did he do certain things, and like the camera is on one side of the TV that he's watching and then like slowly moves behind the TV to like the other side, and that's when he has like epiphany moment. It's like really cool kind of, but like it's very like uh I don't know how to describe it properly, but it's like creepy
It's almost like,
almost.
yeah, almost like voyeuristic a little bit.
Yes,
Like,
yes. Right.
yeah, like you're creeping too.
You're not supposed to quite be seeing that
Yeah.
moment, like something like that.
Yeah, and I mean that's kind of the whole plot of the movie is Will putting himself in the character's shoes, and that's why
Hmm.
he's retired in the beginning, is because he, you know, got so fucked up from catching Hannibal Lecter, which this is his first movie that he's introduced in,
Yeah.
played by Brian Cox, not Anthony Hopkins. But he's, fucked up from that whole encounter that he retired, but now gets pulled back into it and tries to get into the mindset again. And it's just super cool. And the whole Hannibal Lecter in there was really cool, and he plays it very well. Brian Cox plays it very well. I don't know. It was it was such a good viewing experience. I watched it really late last night, and it was like creepy but awesome. Um, the whole uh getting in the mindset, climbing the tree, seeing the voyeuristic view of the house of his victims, stuff like that. The whole chase scene, what I say is like a chase scene with the whole letter of them finding that letter in Hannibal
Yeah.
Lecter's possession and like them trying to
That's
like decode it.
that sequence is awesome. It's
Yeah,
so
it's so
cool.
cool.
Um yeah, they fly through like six or seven different like techniques to try and pinpoint like any kind of details on who the killer might be, or like how they're communicating, and like all these different like forensic things in like a span of maybe a couple minutes. It's like
Yeah,
extremely fast paced and rapid, and like but like very cool, and like
yeah.
they explain everything really well, which is also pretty neat, and like so like you actually understand what's going on. It's such a cool sequence.
Yeah, it's written very well. I mean, Michael Mann did part of this, wrote half the
Hmm.
script. It's based on a book, Red Dragon. It's also been remade in a movie called Red Dragon with Anthony Hopkins as Hannibal and Edward Norton as Will Graham. William Peterson's character, which it's not very good. I don't know. Have you seen that version?
Yeah, it focuses much more on the killer than on Will Graham.
Yeah.
Which Manhunter is definitely much more Graham focused than the Tooth Fairy.
Yeah, I like it way better.
Yeah,
But
there's
now
yeah, it's kind of like it's kind of a preference thing, like because I had seen Red Dragon before this movie, I think.
oh, okay.
And initially I liked Red Dragon more. But after having seen this now a second time, I think I do appreciate this movie a lot more. Because it's not as like it's like like Red Dragon's much more focused on like the murder and the gore and the like this like psychopathy of the killer or whatever. Where I think it's much more interesting to watch Will struggle with this like it's almost like he has too much empathy and he can like get too far into the killer's heads, and like his like fight to stay himself through the movie is
Yeah.
much more interesting, I think.
Yeah. Red Dragon leans a little more horror. This is more psychological thriller.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I will say, for anybody that did watch Manhunter and liked it, I want to say it was on NBC, but there was a fairly recent series called Hannibal on NBC or ABC that is focused on Will Graham, and the series is almost a prequel to Red Dragon. So it's actually a lot of his interactions with Hannibal Lecter and stuff, and Mads Mikkelsen plays Lecter, and I can't remember who plays Will Graham, but he's absolutely fantastic. And
nice.
A lot of that show is him dealing with the fact that he connects too well with these serial killers that he's investigating. So yeah, really cool show. I recommend it if you like this movie.
Nice. And I mean, obviously that's a main theme in this, with him connecting too much, and that's, his son is even worried about him, and his son's like fucking 6 years old.
Yeah.
So, but I like when the whole sequence of Will trying to get in the head of the character, but also like provoke him, where he's like, oh, this guy is, they put on record and in the news that he's like gay, and that he's like, he had sex with his mom and stuff like that, which is fucked up. But it's like, again, it's trying to provoke him. And he's Stephen Lang is the like reporter in this movie. And I forgot he was in this, and I didn't even like recognize him. I thought he looked like the Rick Astley singer, like the Rick Roll singer. He like looks exactly like him, which is So that's all I was thinking about with him. And then him getting kidnapped by Tom Noonan's character, the Tooth Fairy, who plays the killer in this movie. That whole sequence of him kind of like, read this and stuff. It's like, it's creepy. It's creepy. It's so well done.
Yeah. I think one of the other things that they did extremely well, that they kind of hide from you, like a lot of the sequences with the killer, like you see him interacting like at his job, and like he is kind of just a creepy dude overall. But there's one sequence where his coworker that he like kind of hooks up with, like sometime later, gets a ride home from a different coworker, and he's kind of stalking her, and he has this like distorted vision of them like getting like very like sensual on her front porch, and then it cuts to like the reality, and the guy's like, oh, sorry, you had like a little smudge on your face, and like says goodnight and like walks away, and then he like the killer just snaps and decides that he's gonna go kill the two of them. But that sequence is shot like so well, and it's like hyper like distorted and like like delusional, and then
Hmm.
like the like jump cut back to reality is perfect. It's really great.
Yeah. Well, what I love about that, Tom Noonan he's so good in this movie, and
Yeah.
I always think of his character from another Michael Mann film, Heat, where he's like the nerd that helps with like the computers and stuff, and he's like, information's just beamed all over the place. So you got to know how to grab it. I love that.
Hmm.
He's such a good actor, very underrated actor. So his coworker, to kind of add to your point, she's blind,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
like so she can't see. This guy's Tom Noonan's character. He's supposed to be 6'7" and a massive dude, and he's got a kind of a cleft or like hair lip, just a creepy-ish looking dude, and he connects with this blind girl on a an emotional level, and like I love when they like sleep together because he's like, I can't believe this is happening, and it's like you almost you connect with him, and you're like, oh, he's kind of a nice guy, and it like tricks your fucking brain. It's
Yeah.
crazy, and it's master fucking filmmaking in my opinion. He tricks your brain. You're like, you have empathy for this character,
Yeah,
but
it
yet,
humanizes them extremely
yes,
well. And it's
exactly,
yeah, and then they rip you out of it like pretty
yes,
quick, which is
exactly,
pretty fantastic.
yes. It's like, oh, I like connect with this character, like I have empathy for this character, and then they're just like, oh wait, but this guy's a fucking psycho killing all
Yeah.
these people.
Then he shoots
Yes,
the guy like 5 times in the face.
yeah,
It's like
jeez,
less than like 5 minutes later. So yeah.
it's truly master filmmaking in my opinion. And the acting just adds to it all, and the way it's shot. The whole sedated tiger scene is so interesting and
Yeah.
so cool, and just adds another layer to his character. And again, kind of empathy. Like he's taking this blind woman to this hospital, this veterinarian, and she's petting a tiger and like feeling its heartbeat. And like imagine that, like not being able to see and just feeling an animal you'd never be able to do that to, let alone being able to see and do that, which is
Yeah.
crazy. But that tiger was real, and that was like
Mhm.
that veterinarian was real, like all that was real, which is crazy.
Yeah.
And again,
It's pretty neat.
adds to what you were saying about the realism of the movie. It's like, I don't know, it's just
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, so the other thing that I thought was done extremely well was the end sequence when the gunfight breaks out. Um, at first, I couldn't tell like what was going on, but after each gunshot, there's kind of a like quick edit, and it at first it seems like weird and it's a little disorienting. Um, and then I think it's all on purpose though, to purposefully disorient the viewer and make them feel like they're in that shootout. Because it happens after every single gunshot, where
Yeah,
there's like a slight pause, like
almost a
afterward,
jump
and
cut.
then the action starts up
Yeah,
again. Um, so yeah, it's really cool. I kind of want to rewatch just that again, just to like double check. But to me, it seems like it's intentional and it's trying to get you to like so that things don't register quite properly for you and make you feel off balance like through that whole sequence. Because
it is crazy.
it's maybe like a minute long, and there's probably like 10 deaths in that minute, and it's
Yeah,
very fast and like very intense. Because like again, it's the only time guns are fired in the entire movie, I think. So I
yeah.
think they're really trying to punch up like that fact.
Yeah. Well, the whole sequence of Will getting to finding the Tooth Fairy, Tom Noonan's character, is so cool. The whole revelation
Mhm.
scene of him in the mindset, watching the home videos, being like, "Oh, like you shot the video," and like, you know, the whole point he makes where he's like, "Oh, he's probably abused as a child, had a rough childhood, and I empathize with this child. I empathize with him 100%." And like Jack, his partner, is just like, how the hell could you empathize with this killer? He's like, it's a child, but he's like, as an adult, he's irredeemable. I love that whole sequence where he's just like, look, I have, and that's exactly what Michael Mann makes us feel, and that's what the
Yeah,
point I was
right.
getting at earlier is like you empathize with him, but then he's irredeemable because he kills these people. He's a
Right.
serial killer, which is crazy.
Yeah, the conflict between those two things is evident like throughout the movie.
Yeah,
Um and like even Lecter exhibits that quite a bit where like in his conversations with Graham, he's like extremely cordial and like fairly normal. Obviously, he's extremely intelligent. Um,
hmm
like what one of the lines in the movie that's absolutely fantastic is they're kind of bantering back and forth, and Lecter says like, "I bet you think you're smarter than me because you caught me," and Graham says, "No, I know I'm not smarter than you. You just had some disadvantages." And Lecter's like, "And what were those?" He's like, "Well, you're insane," which I thought was great writing.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, the writing's fantastic.
But
Um,
the the sequences with Lecter are great. One because of that, um, and like you see him playing some like subtle mind games through those sequences, but it really becomes evident how like big a piece of shit he is when he he figures out or I can't remember, he's gonna call Graham, I think,
oh, where he
because he
tries and
was,
figures out his address.
yeah, Graham gives him the police file, I think, to examine, and he says he'll call Graham if he has any kind of like insights. So he has the prison, bring him a phone, which is like there's no keypad on it, but
Yeah,
he rips the keypad off, takes the foil wrapper on a piece of gum and like short circuits the phone to dial an operator, calls the University of Chicago and gets them to disclose Will Graham's home address to him,
yeah, it's crazy.
and then gives his address to the Tooth Fairy.
Yeah,
So it's incredibly obvious how like deranged and sick Lecter is after that scene, and that's the like big moment of like, oh yeah, he's not a good guy,
yeah,
like
yeah. And then he realizes he's like, oh, I got to get my family safe, and like the whole dynamic with his wife is really good and his son, and yeah, what's crazy is this movie was made prior to the whole serial killer fad, like you're saying, but also the whole
Mhm.
term serial killer was like not a thing at this time in 1986. Like it was not like serial killer didn't exist, like that name or like term, which is crazy. I read that and I was like, oh, I didn't even know that.
Yeah, because who Gacy is close to getting caught at this point, I
Is it
think. Yeah. Um and
Richard Ramirez too?
Richard
Night
Ramirez
Stalkers around
starting
that
around that
time.
time.
Yeah, so
Bundy was in the 70s, I think.
I'm not
Maybe.
sure on that. I'm not
I
sure
don't
on that
know.
one.
But yeah, I mean it's definitely much earlier in like the infancy of FBI profiling and
Yeah,
like overall.
yeah,
So yeah, it's very cool to see like that at that time,
yeah. It's
because
ahead of
now
its
it's like
time.
it's pretty commonplace in TV shows. There's an entire show just about FBI profiling.
Yeah,
So
yeah. 80s movies, man, they're ahead of their time. That's why we're
yeah.
we're we're talking about them. they're amazing. Um, I thought it was a cool fact. I read that Tom Noonan, who plays the killer, the Tooth Fairy, didn't interact with like any of the cast, and he would like actually like stalk the cast a little bit. Like when they were filming stuff, he would like be creeping and like watching them, which is so cool. It's hilarious.
That's
Also
funny.
creepy. And again, Tom Noonan's a big dude and looks fucking weird, so imagine that. I mean, that's just perfect. And apparently he didn't meet William Peterson until they filmed the scene where they are raiding his house and William Peterson runs through the fucking glass, which is crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, that whole ending sequence with In Nagata Vita, that song playing is so cool, and I think that song matches the whole tone and just craziness, and like you're saying with like the jump cuts with the gunshots. Um, yeah, that ending is really cool.
That song is
It's old.
like, yeah, it's from the 60s.
Yeah.
It's also, I think the one that they're playing in the movie is the like 20-minute version of the song that was like
Seems
on
like
the
it.
album. It's like an entire album side, I think,
Yeah.
on one of their albums. But it's like lyrically it's just kind of a bunch of like mumbo jumbo, like pop music, whatever from the 60s.
Yeah.
But the music itself is very like creepy and like off a little bit. Like I want to say it's like a minor blues or something, so like it's not like a happy song. It's kind
Hmm.
of got like a weird kind of like undertone to it. So
Interesting.
yeah, it works extremely well in that
Yeah.
whole sequence.
Yeah, and then you have the ending with the upbeat '80s song from
Yeah,
Red Seven called "Heartbeat," and it just like matches
as
but doesn't
always in
match.
every
Yeah,
80s movie that's like totally unnecessary. But
yeah, I laughed at that pretty hard. But
yeah.
um, yeah, I mean, I love this movie. I think it's definitely underrated, and I bet a lot of people, as of like most of these movies we're doing, a lot of people of our generation probably haven't seen these, and
Hmm.
they're classics, and they should see them. Um, and I think it's incredibly underrated.
Yeah, yeah, it's really good. I think we both highly recommend it.
Yeah. So, well, thanks for listening, guys. Appreciate you tuning in, and hope you guys go watch Manhunter either before this or after. Uh,
Yeah.
but yeah, thanks for listening.
Yep. See you next week.